I am so very excited for this conversation today. My name is Shayla Faber, and I serve as a member of Columbus City Council, where I chair public service and transportation, housing, and criminal justice and judiciary committees. As you all know, the immigrant and refugee community are essential to the fabric of Columbus, and we must continue to do all that we can to protect and support those who now call our city home. Prior to the global pandemic, the immigrant community paid over $345 million a year in state and local income taxes, $638 million in federal taxes, and spent $2.8 billion in the local economy. 1 in 6 children in Columbus has at least one immigrant parent. That's over 75,000 children that could potentially be impacted by aggressive immigration enforcement and the threat of deportation that ultimately destabilizes families. Spearheaded by Columbus Council member Elizabeth Brown in 2017, the Columbus Families Together Fund is a program that provides legal aid and education to immigrant and refugee families. Since its inception, the fund has provided immigrants with a chance to have a fair day in court with a lawyer, as well as someone to educate and counsel them about immigration law and relief requirements. Ultimately, this program helps restore dignity, humanity, fairness, and justice in the immigration system. I'm very excited to announce that the next grant application for the fund is now available and will stay open through April 28, 2021. The application and additional information can be found at columbus.gov/council/Columbus Families Together Fund. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to my team, Tynesha Harden and Anissa Lieben, who have prepared a presentation in preparation of today's information session. I want to thank you all for your time and your continued advocacy on behalf of our immigrant and refugee families. Ladies, the floor is now yours.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Columbus Families Together Fund Pre-Bidders Conference. Our primary goal today is to provide an overview of the Columbus Families Together Fund initiative and Columbus Families Together Fund grants, as well as answer any questions that you all may have. At this time, I would like for everyone present today to provide their first name, position, and name of the organization that they are with so that we can have a better understanding of who all is on this call. I will kick it off with our ABLE partners. ABLE team, could you first begin? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Eugenio Molo. I'm a managing attorney of the Agricultural Worker and Immigrant Rights Practice Group at ABLE. And I'm joined with my coworker, Maria Otero, who's also on the WebEx. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Otero. I work with Eugenio. I'm out of the Detained office and I have been the attorney that has been working on the previous grant.
We also have with us Director Nicole Ghazi with the Muslim Family Services.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ghazi. Yes, I'm the Executive Director at Muslim Family Services of Ohio. We are a direct social service provider, primarily to the immigrant, refugee, asylee community and the greater Muslim community in Central Ohio. And we do support many of our immigrant families, and I'm eager to learn more about this particular opportunity. Thank you, Anissa.
We also have CARE.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Usjan Hamid. I'm the Government Affairs and Development Director for CARE Ohio. CARE is a civil rights and advocacy organization for American Muslims. And given that the Muslim community is made up largely of immigrants, we are looking forward to learning more about the program during this conference. I'm also joined by my colleague, Whitney Siddiqui, who's our Community Affairs Director.
Thank you. We also have the Bhutanese Community Center here.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sudarshan Pagril. I am with the Bhutanese community of Central Ohio. I'm the Executive Director for the agency. We are a post-resettlement human service agency, and we provide services to primarily recently resettled refugees. And also our services extend to South Asian communities, so they could be refugee, immigrants, asylees, and others. So we are in that sort of in direct contact and impacted by the recent changes in the policies with the immigrants.
Thank you. We also have Avanza Together.
Hi, my name is Virginia Nunes Gutierrez, and I'm the Executive Director of Avanza Together. We're a 501c3 that works directly with families that are impacted by deportation. And we're also focusing on how to advocate for policies to make immigration justice more accessible for low-income families, specifically in Franklin County.
Thank you, Virginia. And our final guest here today is Amelia with the Riverview International Group.
Hi, my name is Emilia Sheely. I'm Assistant Director at Riverview International Center. We are a direct services and advocacy agency serving about 650 diversity visa lottery winners in the Riverview Drive area. We have a handful of refugee and asylee families, but primarily we're serving DV winners from the MENA and South Asia regions.
Thank you all so much for those introductions. We will go ahead and begin today's presentation. My name is Anissa, and I serve as a legislative assistant for Councilmember Faber.
Anissa, you're on mute. Or we're unable to get your audio clear.
Thank you. Is this a lot better?
Yes.
Thank you. We will now go ahead and begin with an overview of the Columbus Families Together Fund initiative. Afterwards, we will go ahead and answer any questions that were submitted to our office and conclude with closing remarks. So the Columbus Families Together Fund initiative was established in 2017 to protect immigrant and refugee families from the financial and emotional devastation that resulted from aggressive immigration enforcement. As of today, our fund provides funding to support legal education and representation for eligible immigrants in removing proceedings before the Cleveland Immigration Court. The Columbus Families Together Fund provides immigrants with a chance to have their fair day in court with a lawyer, someone to educate and console them about immigration law and relief requirements, and answer their questions about the detention and removal process. It's important because the program helps to restore the dignity, humanity. My apologies there. I seem to have gone too far back. My apologies. The program helps to restore dignity, humanity, fairness, and injustice in the immigration system. Roughly 10% of the city's residents are foreign born. About 10% of the population is in that group. Our Somali population is the second largest in the nation, and nearly half of all refugees settled in Ohio are settled here in Franklin County. And as many of us are aware, immigrants and refugee communities are critical to contributing to the economy here in our community. They pay about $345 million each year in state and local income taxes and roughly $638 million in federal taxes, and spend $2.8 billion in the local economy. One of the reasons we put the Columbus Families Together Fund initiative together was because we understood that legal advocacy is very critical now more than ever. As the coronavirus pandemic continues, we understand that many people of color fall disproportionately, and that a lot of immigrant communities and people who are detained and incarcerated are impacted. Right now, these are very vulnerable populations, and we know that they are victims of crime, or oftentimes are labeled as being victims of crime, and are victims of financial scams and fear, and have a lot of fear. We know that because of fear of a loved one's deportation prevents them, undocumented or not, from reporting the crimes. Aggressive deportation tactics do tear deported parents from their children, which induces permanent financial strains on families and places children into the foster care system and causes unnecessary burdening state and local resources for the long run. When we get into grounds of deportability, as many of you guys will be able to view in the RFP document, we know that even someone with a green card can, upon committing certain acts or crimes, become deportable from the United States. And we also know that US law contains a long list of grounds upon which non-citizens or immigrants may be deported back to their country of origin. When faced with an encounter with law enforcement or ICE officials, we know that immigrants who know their rights can reduce their chances of detention in a lawful fashion. This is why it was very critical for us to provide grants to organizations here in Columbus that were at the forefront of immigration reform and were assisting these communities, because when a lot of our new Americans and refugees and immigrants are provided with things such as know your rights trainings, we know that that increases their chances of avoiding being detained. At this time, I will turn it over to my colleague, Tynesha Harden, who will conclude the second half of today's presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Tynesha Harden, serve as legislative aide to Councilmember Faber. Anissa, do you mind pulling the presentation back up? I think you have the right, so I might need you to flip through for me. And if we could go to the next slide. So this year with the Columbus Families Together Fund, we will be once again doing two different grants. So the first grant is for the actual legal services that will be provided. I believe that slide isn't included. That's why I'm talking about it a little more here. So that grant will be for a total of $300,000. All funding for the program this year is coming from the City of Columbus. We still are working with the Vera Institute for Justice as a part of the Safe Communities Network. However, funding this year is coming solely from the city. That does give us a little more flexibility, as we'll get into some of your questions a little later that have already been submitted to us. But we're excited to still have Vera's support for some of the more technical assistance and marketing, and of course, access to the network for other cities and organizations that are providing these services. And the additional grant is we've added some funding this year for the smaller grants for a total of $75,000 that can go to multiple organizations, but these are going to be for some of the services that include know your rights training sessions, applications for visas, political asylum, etc. If you have already had a chance to look at the RFP, we did designate just a line that said in other services as detailed in the application. I believe we had some feedback from the last round of funding that there were some other things that would sort of come up, whether they be some filing fees, transportation issues that were all critical to this work. So we want to make sure that those opportunities are covered through this grant program as well. Next slide, please. To be eligible, we require that you are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that does good business in the state of Ohio. And of course, we would want to see a track record of serving the immigrant and refugee community here in Columbus. Next slide. I did talk just very briefly about the direct legal assistance grant already. That is going to be for a total of $300,000. Again, we want to make sure that your organization demonstrates that you have a history and track record of providing these services. Obviously, good knowledge of the courts here in Ohio and how they work. Overall, one thing I haven't mentioned, obviously this grant was originally started in 2017, and last year we entered the pandemic, so that has changed quite a bit how both your organizations work with clients that come to you, and obviously the ability to travel to court. So we are asking that you explain in your applications how you will sort of navigate the current atmosphere to make sure that this work is able to be completed. If you have any questions or suggestions that might help all of the other organizations as they are also looking at this opportunity, please do let us know. I believe you all have a much greater knowledge of that than we do, but we want to make sure that those considerations are given in this next round of funding. Next slide. I believe we already mentioned that the applications are going to be due April 28th. We'll be reviewing them and making sure that we get a decision by mid-May. With that in mind, we hope that these services can begin no later than June 30th. Again, all of this information is going to be detailed in the RFP, but of course, if there are questions or concerns, once again, you can always feel free to reach out to myself or Anissa, and our contact information, I believe, is going to be at the end of this presentation, and it's also on the website. Next slide. Yes, I mentioned that we will get decisions out by mid-May, May 19th at the latest. I believe the next slide will detail that we do have a committee that is our sort of experts in this field that will be helping us review the applications, and so we can understand your organization's ability to fulfill the services. And again, if there are any questions or concerns outside of what else will be answered here today, please feel free to reach out to us. And I will go ahead and turn it back over to Anissa to start going through some of the questions we already received. And of course, we'll open it up to any additional questions as well.
Thank you, Ty. And as Ty mentioned, all questions and answers from today's session will be added to the CFTF webpage, and you can write it down here to make sure that you do have access to the RFP document. So one of the first questions that were submitted to our team was someone had wanted to know if the grant could be applied towards staff salary or if it would be restricted to just programming. As of now, the grant funds may be applied towards personal and fringe benefits, and any additional information regarding the funding types in budget information can be found on pages 10 through 14 of the RFP documents. So I definitely encourage you all to take a look through the RFP document for any questions related to how the grant dollars can be applied. The second question that we had received is if the grant was for 1 year or if it would be a multi-year grant. The Columbus Families Together Fund grants are not multi-year grants. Once the awarded grants have been allocated for, it will not be renewed. Another question that we had received was if the funding would cover the lifetime of a case. Now, this is a very interesting question because it had come up several times. We do feel that it is a responsibility of the grant recipient to ensure that all cases taken on are paid for, and that representation initiated under Columbus Families Together Fund under the funding must be continued through the deposition of the case, including those cases that will be completed after the contract period. And so if you have additional questions about this as well, it is detailed in the RFP documents. And if you still have additional questions, please feel free to contact our team. And another question that we had received was, what can be done to ensure that a case is covered for its entire lifetime? I think one thing that may be very helpful is, as an organization, maybe being mindful of the number of cases that you are taking on. It would certainly be very helpful to lower the number of cases accepted or the number of clients represented. So for example, if you receive, a $70,000 grant, just, being mindful of how you could stretch those dollars to ensure that that case that you are taking on is actually covered. Ty, did you want to elaborate on that?
Not too much. I think just as within the last grant period, we did sort of lay out an expectation that any cases taken on during the grant period, we really do hope that you can see that case through to completion. We are open to conversations about how we can help make sure that happens. So please feel free if that happens. Once you're awarded the grant, we do require reporting and things like that. So as you're filling out those quarterly grant reports or annual, kind of just check in with us and we can sort of walk through those particular cases together.
Another question that our office had received was, where can I find details regarding the format of the grant application? Information regarding proposal formatting can be found on pages 11 through 14 of the RFP document. And so I definitely encourage you to take a look at that as well. We had also received a question regarding, it had stated our grant request in 2017 was turned down. Why? I definitely, want to say that although our team wasn't part of the initial Columbus Families Together Fund grant process, we do know that our colleagues at the time had received various competitive grant applications in 2017. We can't provide you with an answer, but we can share that we have expanded the criteria this time around. We are also aware of the disproportionate impact COVID-19 has had on immigrants and refugees in our community. And this is really why we are committed to expanding our eligibility requirements to reflect the growing needs of our ever-changing community. And so, if you had applied in 2017 and didn't get it then, know that this time around, we have expanded that criteria in the application. One of our final questions that we had received was regarding the average cost per case. We are still confirming this and hope to have an answer for everyone soon. Ty, did you want to provide any feedback about that specific question? I know it was something that had come up previously.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this question, some of our previous grant recipients might be able to help answer this. I think it's somewhat difficult to answer. So I'm definitely happy to follow up with a more concrete answer to that question. But I'm also open if anyone from ABLE that's on the line would like to chime in there. So we could talk through that a little bit. That would be helpful as well.
And I can repeat the question. It was, what was the average cost per case?
Yeah, so this is Eugenio from ABLE. I think that's a really difficult question because part of the RFP model is that it's a merits blind process to determine which cases to accept. So it's a universal representation model where as long as someone meets the eligibility criteria, they qualify for services. So there's some cases where the person may only be eligible for voluntary departure. There's other cases where the person may be eligible for asylum or non-LPR cancellation of removal. And you may lose on both of those cases and appeal both of those cases and get remanded on one of those issues. So there's some cases that can be as short as 10 hours. There can be, Maria's worked on cases where she got good results and she put in more than 100 hours on the case. So I think it's very much case specific. So I don't have a good answer in terms of an average case amount. I'm sorry. It depends on the client and what relief is available.
Yeah, thank you for attempting to answer that, Eugenio. And we do sort of detail the universal representation model in the RFP. And again, I think that sort of, it makes it difficult to say what the average cost of one case would be. It just really determines on the circumstances.
Thank you. And I believe it was ABLE that had submitted a question regarding, will a Columbus resident previously detained by ICE at the Butler County Jail qualify for legal representation under Columbus Families Together Fund, assuming all other eligibility requirements are met? Ty, did you want to provide an answer to this question?
Yes, and I think this question may have come up some months ago when our team was just starting to dig into this, and we are saying yes. The answer to that question is yes. As long as a resident, it's a Columbus resident that we are hoping to help through this process, we are open to that circumstance. So if there's like a more specific circumstance that you'd like to discuss, we're happy to do that as well, but we are okay with that this time around.
And a similar question was, will a Columbus resident currently detained by ICE, but at a different Ohio detention facility, i.e. the Columbus resident was driving in Northern Ohio, stopped by the police, and eventually transferred to immigration custody at the Seneca County Jail in Tiffin, Ohio, and subject to removal proceedings, qualify for legal representation under CFTF? So the answer to this is also yes. At this time, those were the questions that were submitted to our team. And at this time, we will make sure to provide all of the answers on the from today on the Columbus Families Together Fund webpage. But if there were any questions that came up maybe during our presentation today, please feel free to send our team an email and we'll do our best to get back to you. Or we can maybe provide a couple of minutes now to answer any questions that you all may have.
Anisha, maybe a quick question, which is already a lot of my questions have been answered. One is how many grantees would be given the $300,000 and how many would be given the $75,000?
I'm sorry, we'll be working with one grantee for the $300,000. So that's for the direct legal representation. And then we don't have a number for the $75,000 that's available for the smaller grants. I know in the last round, we didn't have as much funding and we only awarded 2 organizations, but we do hope to be able to work with some additional organizations this time around, depending on the number of applications that we receive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Angie, are we able to use the raise hand feature in case anyone has questions?
I can certainly see if I can set that up for you. I'm sorry, council member, I didn't know you needed that.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
If anyone does have any questions, you can come off of mute. You don't necessarily have to use the raise hand feature, but if you do have questions.
Council member, I was able to change that event option back. So the
Awesome.
Raise hand option is available at this time if anyone would like to use it.
Thank you, Miss Angie. If any of our guests have any questions about the program, now's the time to ask. And as the team has indicated, if a question pops up after the conclusion of today's program, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. Ladies, if you could give your contact information again for the good of the order.
Sure. Again, my name is Tynesha Harden. You can email me at tyharden, HARDEN @columbus.gov. And my direct line is 614-645-5524.
And my name is Anissa Liban, and I can be emailed at aaliban@columbus.gov. And my direct line is 614-965-8297.
And once again, where folks can find the information to get the RFP and all of the FAQ questions that have been answered.
Yes, and so all answers and questions from today's session will be posted to the Columbus Families Together Fund webpage. I will send an email to everyone with that webpage link and included as well as all the deadlines as well.
Well, I'm going to look one more time to see if there are any questions, any raised hands. If not, we just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your day. It's a beautiful day to join us to have this conversation. We truly are excited about this program and the impact that it could have on our immigrant and refugee residents in Columbus. We thank you for your continued advocacy in this space. It's much needed. Please feel free to reach out to our office if you have any questions that relate to this topic. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.